A few years back, I was awake laying in bed. It was a quiet Sunday morning. I'm usually the first one awake in my house on the weekend, married, 3 kids. I remember this so vividly and clearly because we were in the middle of painting our bedroom and had the curtains off and the room was blindingly bright. I was awake in bed for about 10 minutes just laying there, my wife asleep, thinking of the day ahead when I heard someone coming up the stairs. Our home is 120 years old, creaky original flooring. I've heard this sound hundreds of times from my room. Typical layout at the top of the stairs, one main hall with all our bedroom doors branching off, mine being the last one at the end of the hall. I can tell which door in the hall someone is walking to with my eyes closed, and certainly know if someone is coming to mine because I'm the last door. Oftentimes my children go downstairs for water early. I assumed this was the case. I heard the steps coming up the stairs, and once they reached the top, I could tell they were coming to my room. So laying still, I turned my head to greet what I thought was one of my kids. What happened next is burned in my memory forever. A small head peered around the doorframe and looked directly at me, maybe 3.5 feet from the floor. All I see is what looks like a boy with almost black hair, a disheveled bowl cut, white skin and black rough-cut holes for eyes. We were both startled, and it immediately dashed away. Till this day, I don't know what launched me forward. My instinct was to either convince myself what I just saw and catch this thing, or find out it was one of my kids and I was hallucinating. It was literally 1.5 seconds between the time I saw it and me leaping to the doorway looking into the hall. The thing just vanished. I went into my daughter's rooms one by one and they were all very much asleep. I searched the house basement to attic. Nothing. This house has many stories, but this one was unlike anything myself or my family have ever experienced.
It was a cold October evening, not too far off from Halloween. I remember sitting in my room, watching a scary movie. The evening was slowly creeping by, so I decided to go to the corner store. It was only 3 blocks, shouldn't be much trouble, right? During my walk, I see the occasional person putting up Halloween decorations and kids playing in their yards, but this story is about something far more sinister. I remember seeing 2 teens about age 14 knocking on a door asking to use the phone, which of course I thought was weird because most teens these days have phones. As I kept walking, they stopped and stared at me for a short moment. I felt the blood in veins chill. I felt so creeped out I hurried to the next block. The next block seemed fine until I looked behind me and saw the 2 teens were following me. I took off sprinting to the store at this point. I saw the sign for the store, and relief washed over me. I opened the door, and I told the cashier about what happened on the way here. He looked at me slightly creeped out and told me a story about this happening to him in his hometown, and how they found him the day he left and asked for his help. In an emotionless voice, he told me to never agree to help. He told me another story, but at that point, I was no longer paying attention because they were standing at the door asking to be let in. The cashier freaked out and locked the door. The teens never seemed to waver or leave. They wouldn't step away from the door. It had been an hour. The cashier and I were ready to fight our way out, but instead he took me out the back. One of the teens came around the back just as the door shut behind us. "Can you help me?" is all he could say. He was closing in on us, and his eyes, they were black as a starless night. They were peering right into my soul. I couldn't help but gaze into his eyes. The terror. I can't remember too much of what happened next, but I do recall the sounds of struggle. When I came to, the cashier was struggling with both teens. He was calling out to me for help. I ran towards them, grabbed him by his collar and pulled him between the 2, and knocking them over in the process. I didn't look back until I was near my house. The cashier was gone, but the teens were still following behind. I ran into my house, closed all the blinds, and turned the music up. I got lucky that day. I never did see those strange teens again. I tried to find and thank the cashier for saving my life that day, but he didn't show up to work after that. I asked his boss, and he told me he called over the phone and quit. He said he was moving. To this very day, I sometimes feel the fear of those eyes watching me as I drive to work. I sometimes will look out my window and swear I see them watching my house from a couple blocks away, waiting for their next chance.
When I was 5, I shared a room with my baby sister, and the closet door never closed right. As I got a little older, I remember seeing this little boy with black, soulless eyes come out of the closet, and he would always want me to play with him. I had a decent nightlight that gave a soft glow throughout the room, and the boy never traveled into the light. I remember how, at one point, he actually got mad that I kept refusing to play with him, and he snuck around the room, grabbed the cord to the nightlight and threw it to the ground, immediately waking my baby sister, who started screaming. I got in trouble because my mom always thought that I was the one she heard playing in the room, and she was especially mad when she found the broken nightlight. She tried to punish me by leaving us without a nightlight, but I convinced her to at least leave the door open because I knew the boy would never be able to get to either of us. We eventually moved from the house, and to this day, I have never slept in the full dark, especially with the closet door open. Up until this point, I wrote it off as a bad dream and thought that was it. But my little sister said that she heard children giggling the other night, that it stopped whenever she turned on the lights and made sure all the doors throughout the house were shut, and it brought back memories. To make things even more interesting, my boss recently admitted that there's an old superstition about not letting children sleep in a dark room with the closet door open. When I asked why, he said that there were black-eyed children who would coax the children into the closet, and they would never be seen again. Is there really an urban legend of black-eyed children in closets? Why do I only hear about the black-eyed children on the streets going after adults? I need answers.
I believe I've encountered the black-eyed children over a decade ago in rural Appalachia. This has always low-key disturbed me. Keeping in touch to this day, we've never brought it up again. We were at a state park sort of place around 11 p.m. I remember we were parked alongside the woods and some picnic tables. It was pretty desolate. We were technically trespassing, 17-year-old female and 17-year-old male at the time. And what we were doing there, you can leave to your imagination. As our curfews were approaching and we were finishing up our time together, we experienced a very ominous feeling. He was in the driver's seat preparing to start the car and pull off. The car doesn't start. We sort of laughed it off as it wasn't the first time and talked. Suddenly, to the right, passenger side where I was sitting, we see faint lights coming out of the woods. The ominous feeling intensified. Emerging from the woods, there are 4 to 5 children, younger than us, like appearing to be 7, 11 years old. The first thing I noticed were these very black, dark eyes. I was pretty shook. I didn't read about the black-eyed children lore phenomenon until years later, which described everything else that we experienced. All I can say is they were not normal. They didn't belong. The cabins at the park were not occupied. They weren't even getting rented out as it was autumn, winter. We were miles from the park's hotel. There were no adults. They were absolutely out of place. What were the lights? I don't know, but the closest thing I can compare them to are glow sticks. As if they had opened a package of those novelty glow sticks that include bracelets, necklaces, or wands. But it wasn't like they were having fun or goofing off. They just stopped, stood there, and stared at us. He tried asking what they were doing here, if they were lost. Where are their parents? No response. The oldest-looking male child, a bit heavy-set with a gray hoodie on, approached the vehicle just in the front, where the passenger headlight corner would be. My friend started really freaking out at this moment. He locked the doors and said, "Hell no, we gotta go." Eventually, the car starts. The children don't move, and the kid stays put in front of the car. My friend eventually yells to the kid, "I'm going to run you over." The boy slowly backs away, raises his arm, and points at us as we were leaving. I didn't look back. That was the creepiest thing we both had ever experienced to this day.